Hey there, welcome to episode 162 of the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program. I'm your host, Dan Hugo, recording this at 2:47 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time here in Greater Vegas on this Friday, April 3rd, 2026. Already April. It's crazy. Crazy times. Today's title and topic of the episode is K-shaped Vegas. We'll get into what that is exactly in a moment. If you're not familiar with the Cafe Genius Impresarios audio program, Cafe Genius was started in, I think, I've been saying 2022, and I'm pretty sure that's correct. Yeah, I think that's correct. We started Cafe Genius to facilitate the pitch workout room, which kicked off in January of 2022, if I remember. It doesn't really matter. We've been around for a while. The idea was to enable people with ideas to get up in front of a room full of people, 30-ish, 10, 30, somewhere in there, and present their idea in 5 minutes. And so the pitch workout room was our first undertaking. I think it is 2022 because we started the Genius Roundtable in 2023, also in January. So yeah, that sounds right. I think those are lining up correctly. Cafe with 2 F's and no accent is an homage to Cafe Centro in San Francisco, not the San Francisco area, in actual San Francisco, in South Park, across the street, literally, from the ballpark, the Oracle ballpark, used to be the AT&T ballpark, Pac-Bell ballpark, etc. Cafe Genius with an accent was where startups start. Several Bay Area startups in the San Francisco region, they would meet there, or some people would actually bring their laptop and work there and so on. I've been there several times. It was a cool spot in an actual park with park benches and trees and grass, and coffee was good. So great spot. No longer with us. Did not survive very long after the pandemic, unfortunately. So, and again, something of an homage. Something that I think Vegas needs in our entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. I don't know if you heard the road noise, production by a street. Cafe Centro represents a model of interactivity in a coffee shop. Vegas coffee shops with people who hang out will sometimes turn into a earbud fest, where people are generally there to do their own thing and not interact and socialize. I'm not saying that's like 100% universal, but it's something I noticed, and I'm hoping it will swing back to something a little bit more interactive. Sometimes that's where ideas come from, but certainly that cultural element of a entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, the places where people can run into each other, used to be serendipitous collisions in the downtown project days. That's for another time. So yes, I've said many times, there needs to be Cafe Centros, multiple, around the greater Vegas area, thus the homage to Cafe Centro. The Genius part is a reference to the Genius lunches that were relatively common in the downtown project days here in Vegas, where people who were either in the project, the downtown, not as employees of the downtown project entity itself, but being part of the startup community, not a word I like to use so often, but there it is, startup community that was the downtown project. So it was people that were either participating directly with their own startup pursuits, or maybe people adjacent. Myself, I was merely a spectator. I was working for Intel Corporation at the time, so I was traveling a lot. Every once in a while, I would get some sort of a message that, hey, we're having a lunch tomorrow. You want to join in if you're in town? So I was invited to participate in that capacity. But it was generally an idea exchange, catching up with people, a little gossip exchange as well. It's a good way for busy people that are kind of in the same boat, not necessarily doing the same things, but same aspirations, same methodology. There's never enough time. We're always looking for more funding, or we're behind on where we wanted to be on our schedule, et cetera, et cetera. There's always, and I always tell people, starting a new restaurant and starting a software company are wildly different, yet there's still some similarities. There are some who will say, oh, small business is not the same as a startup. Yeah, I'm not the same as you. So, you have to be careful where you draw your lines of so-called community with the air quotes. So yeah, I'm a fan of exchange of ideas rather than putting up. Well, we don't need more silos in Vegas, to be sure. So I'm a fan of people crossing paths and having novel discussions about interesting possibilities. The impresarios, that is this audio program, impresarios spelled with two S's, which is less common but nonetheless correct, are the people that are doing these things. The idea was to have Cafe Genius Impresarios, a place where we could have conversations with people pursuing their various entrepreneurial and or innovative endeavors. We have had interviews, but not so often. We'll change that eventually. There's so much going on in the ways of flux. No, flux is not the word. Flux sounds like it would be the word. But transition, pursuits of the diverse economy that may or may not cause other issues for the existing fun economy, and that is a trademarked term. The trademark is held by the UNLV Office of Economic Development since February of 2025. I like to point that out so we are absolutely clear what is important. The Global Innovation Hub is not a trademark term. Hollywood 2.0, not trademarked. So I don't think they could be. But anyway, K-shaped Vegas, let's take a look at what that actually is. Hopefully, wherever you found this audio program, you're able to locate the episode description, which contains the show notes, including a summary, which is a little bit longer than normal, but not too bad. The links for today's episode, there are actually the two normal episode or channel links and two episode links, which we will touch on. And then we'll get on with the show on this lovely and cooler, although only temporarily. I mean, we are in a desert after all. Cooler day, Friday, April 3rd. So here we go. The summary of today's episode. We exist in interesting times, to be sure. Here in Vegas, a sign of the economic times. Those with more money are finding their entertainment value, while the rest of us normal folks may not be finding the Vegas we once made a frequent destination. Is it us and them, or maybe us versus them? I don't want to be too divisive right up front. Some people believe that Vegas is an indicator of the economy. There's a New York Times article I will mention briefly or shortly, and as someone says, if the country has a cold, Nevada or Vegas especially, but Reno as well, but Vegas has the flu, and then the Attorney General, I believe it is, says we have pneumonia. So because people with less disposable income would tend to come to Vegas less frequently. So how do you solve that? Well, maybe you make an appeal to those with more money to spend so they're not so concerned about fees and whatnot, especially if you have huge interest payments to make. So that's the thing for the K-shaped economy. The Cafe Genius homepage, don't forget, cafe with two F's, cafegenius, no space, .org. There's a bunch of stuff. I'm not even going to comment on the fact that I've not yet beautified all of my various web properties. I'm all over the place, to be honest. Me, as your host, I have a profile page linking everything at buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo. You can find links to all of my various audio programs there. You don't have to buy me a coffee. You don't have to spend any money there at all. But aside from those links, it's a free form, page. So unlike using like a link tree or something similar, here you can just click away on whatever you feel like learning more about. Some information on various projects. There are some actual affiliate links for things I use. And don't forget the Buy Me an Update audio program is published first on buymeacoffee.com/danhugo/posts. That's where the name came from. But then about 2 hours later, that same episode will be posted in the usual places. So still hanging on to the Buy Me a Coffee update, Buy Me an Update publication on buymeacoffee.com first, but not exclusively. Buymeacoffee.com/DanHugo has been around for 5 years as of March. Very exciting. Here's one article that illustrates the K-shaped economy. And I want to say right now, this is not a book report on that article, but as it happens, one single article encapsulates the notion that I have talked about across several episodes, which I'll say again. It's a New York Times article about our economy. It has a guest unlocked article code in the URL, so you should be able to view the entire article, at least for a little while. It was published on March 28, 2026. It's about the Las Vegas economy. Coincidentally, recession shapes as a reference for the K shape. You will hear this often in recession recovery, a K-shaped recovery. But we're starting to hear it more with a K-shaped economy, with a K-shaped attitude. The K meaning if you view the left half of the graph or the left axis of a chart, actually, not a graph really, of a chart, then there's some people that are going up, so that the upward ascending part of the K, and there's some people who are not, and that's the descending part of the K. So there's a split, a bifurcation, if you like. Those with money already have money, they're going to have more money, and those who are not rolling in dough are going to end up doing poorly for various reasons. So I am positing the notion that the greater Vegas economy, though economic diversification efforts are underway, and they have been for 7 or 8 years, K-shaped. So we'll see. Let's see what you come up with, or what you come away with, I should say. One article says it, as I mentioned. So I have actually talked about this notion quite a bit over several episodes. We're on episode 162, so it's been more than 1 or 2 other episodes, and so here and there, I've mentioned this. This is not an episode about a single New York Times article. So, but the single article does happen to have both parts of our K-shaped economy mentioned. It's by no means a deep dive, but I think there are 2 reasonable indicators to point to as examples, but these are not proof by any means, but they're examples. They're telling. So this could be called a recovery from the pandemic lockdown era, when the Vegas economy definitely did suffer. So after all these years, is it still a pandemic recovery? Well, we did hit record tourism or visitor numbers for 2024. That's when the Super Bowl was in Vegas. So it's arguable whether that was tied directly, to the state of affairs of an economic recovery. Some people will often say, "Oh, Vegas bounces back immediately during, transitions out of a recession or general lack of disposable income on which people depend for their Vegas vacations." So was 2024 an anomaly? 2025 had a little bit of a drop from, I think it was 7 or 8%. I think it was. We talked about that specifically in a previous episode. So that's why I don't have to remember everything, because I record them. So we're coming off record tourism numbers of 2024, and the decline of those numbers for 2025 has been the source of some angst, but it has been material for countless YouTube videos showing just how dead Vegas is, and it's over. Here are the next 10 casinos to go bankrupt or something. So a lot of, hey, I got to publish content, so I'll just start making stuff up. But the visitor numbers are real. The question is what they actually mean, and we've talked about that too, Goodhart's Law and all this. There's some hand waving on the upper half of the K and some reality shared on the lower half in this article. Generally speaking, the fun economy, and trademark, yada, yada, we did that, is still the focus. The fun economy is not going away on its own anytime soon. Gentrification could accelerate some problems, which may be why the LVCVA monthly numbers continue to get attention. Right, so every month, and I noticed that February had 2.5%, I think it was 2.1, 2.5% more visitors than February of 2025. Now remember, 2025 was a decrease compared to 2024 for that same month. But when the numbers are bad, they seem to wait as long as possible to publish. So last day of the month. This time, with a slight increase, the numbers were published, I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. So it was, like a good 3 or 4 days before. The Friday would have been what was Friday? March. Friday would have been March 27th. So I think they were published on about the 24th. So if they were published on the 27th, they would be negative, but that's the pattern. I don't know if that's what they actually, if that's by design, but it was interesting to note seemed happy. They, the OVCVA and casino owners and the companies behind them and so on. And these numbers should get attention. In my opinion, it is still the fun economy that should not be sacrificed through gentrification and refocus on high value visitors that may already be leading to troubling cuts in hours and staff among the fun economy workforce. So the fun economy is not something to throw away by any means as part of an economic diversification effort, et cetera. But even though there are these continued moves towards that economic diversification effort since 2018 or so, not to mention the right to start effort for startups, trying to encourage more people to start more things. And the entrepreneurial 501c3 entity, where I think Nevada is participating to various degrees as a founding state, I think, and maybe Washoe County is a little bit more active so far in there. Getting information from the associated websites is not quite easy. That they are startups themselves. They're just getting going this year, but they're new. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. So in the face of all these things, we have to be keeping an eye out for whether any of these efforts will collide, if they will undo each other, if they will be symbiotic or detrimental. So there's all kinds of moving parts to consider. To be honest, this is the cohesion thing, perhaps, where a clear message is not easy to come by. Is Nevada a part of Right to Start? Yes. Is it a founding state in Right to Start and or America the Entrepreneurial? There are some mentions here and there, but it's not really clear. If you go to those websites, is Nevada doesn't appear to be mentioned prominently, but is the Washoe County is mentioned, but not Clark County. So it would be interesting if there was a Nevada local component of those to point to say, oh, okay, so here's from the ground up, here's where we are, not ground up, but from the ground looking up, rather than a top down, like waiting on the LVGEA or EDON to mention, for the GoEd to post something like, hey, by the way, we're a part of this. So it'd be nice if there was a little bit more proaction from those of us who would be a part of Right to Start and or America the Entrepreneurial. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm not against keeping the fun economy floating. It does fund a certain amount of the workforce, and it also is a part of the local economy, even if small businesses, startups, general, revenue generating activities by normal people, locals, are not directly attached to tourism and the Strip and downtown Las Vegas and various other spots. But they're still they're part of the economy if they're not part of the specific businesses and business models of those places. So the fun economy is an economic driver. During the pandemic, if anybody had any doubts, they saw what the impact of turning off the fun economy here had on not only cost of living, with a 25 to 40% increase in rents, layoffs and so on. There's nobody here. There's no reason to have a staff of hospitality and other fun economy workforce. So these are real things. And so I'm in general, I don't think gentrification should be one of the things that people drive for. Hey, move your staff from Silicon Valley to Vegas. That's where people buy houses or homes for cash, and then they drive prices up just from being here. So you gentrify. And I will point out, I was in Sunnyvale, California in 1993. I moved there from college. That's when Silicon Valley was just getting started, and the prices of everything shot up because the tech economy was taking over. And I'm not saying Sunnyvale or the Bay Area were an agrarian economy. They were, many decades prior, several decades. The apricot fields of Sunnyvale are still known to this day. But a friend of mine who lived in Sunnyvale, Mountain View, one of those, he said, oh, when I first moved here, this was long before I got there was space between the towns, between Mountain View and Sunnyvale, where there was trees, orchards and stuff. That all gave way. So cities bump right up into each other. There's really no agriculture of anywhere near that scale within the peninsula, et cetera. So when you turn on the, hey, startups, hey, big companies, come on down and bring your expensive, well-paid employees and so on. And that's something that's been touted at things like the Las Vegas Tech Summit. Oh, housing here is so cheap. You can just move here and bring your employees and so on. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. America the Entrepreneurial. That's something I'm trying to find out more information. So the cohesion thing, it will be interesting to see if we can clarify that messaging. So there's more of a like, oh, okay, yes, this is what's actually going on. Not, oh, there's a post on LinkedIn somewhere might be able to, no, come on. Speaking of messaging, the top half of a K-shaped economy appears to have a clear message that is perhaps somewhat opaque and optimistic. Opaque meaning they're telling you things without showing their homework, their work, showing the math. Right. There's some math that's visible, but what sort of accounting trickery is happening? Where everything is actually fine. That's what they're saying. An upside for 2026 and beyond, no problem. While the bottom half of the K, the one heading down, is possibly a bit more honest, certainly a bit more transparent, and often focused on individual business owners struggling or even closing their businesses. Restaurants tend to get more attention in Vegas because they are certainly very transparent. Like, you can walk into a restaurant. Some small businesses, you cannot do that, but restaurants are generally retail establishments. You walk into the restaurant, you can see if it's crowded or empty, etc. It's kind of like a casino in that regard, and people can make judgments. But restaurant owners restaurants are already on the knife edge of margins. So if you are able to stay open for more than a year, you're obviously onto something. And if you can make it past 5 years, you're good. And if you have regular customers and all that. So the restaurant business is pretty much an indicator from the bottom half of the K where things are in the Vegas area. I'm not saying it's the only one, and I'm not saying it's always dead on accurate, an indicator, but restaurants do get a lot of attention. There are several publications and YouTube influencers and whatnot that spend their time and energies promoting or lamenting the state of restaurants and so on. So they're part of the story, and they're the part that gets the attention. And so the examples in the article are the owner of Circa and the D in California, Derek Stevens, versus one restaurant owner. But that one restaurant is telling a familiar story that I myself am reading more often month over month. So they're a go-to indicator, but not the only by any means. And there's more to the story. A harbinger of ripple effects, in my opinion. So let's talk about the upper half of the K. You can check out the Vegas Bourgeoisie episode of this audio program that we did not long ago, about this part of the local economy, which gets more attention and is the goal when it comes to decisions around big deals like Formula One races. And we've done multiple episodes on what I call the F1 on economy. Fun. If you pronounce fun, but you have F1 in it, F1UN, fun economy. So it's a silent one, I guess. So our F1 on economy, fun economy. It could also be the F1 on economy. I think I probably made that joke already. So there was a 3-part series of episodes during the first round of Formula One racing. The second one, I think I did a before and after, but not quite as much. And then the third one, I touched on it because it's kind of the same thing. The Formula One race caters to the money, not to the impact, the economic impact across the city. So everybody did great except for those who didn't. And there were lawsuits and other things. Those tourism numbers are important to keep the top of the chart moving in the right direction. So tourism is driving, not completely and not only, but it's certainly a strong component of the top part of the K. The takeaway from the New York Times article, this is an excerpt, so I've copy and pasted this text from the article. Article quote, Derek Stevens, who owns several casinos in downtown Las Vegas, said his property's limos are picking up more private jet passengers than ever before. He said he is tired of seeing headlines about Las Vegas's financial woes. And this is a Derek Stevens quote. There's a lot of money out there in the economy, unquote, Mr. Stevens said, pointing to the crowded gambling tables at one of his casinos, Circa, on a recent afternoon. Derek Stevens quote, all our minimums are pretty high. Every seat is taken. That's why when you hear these single quote, Vegas is dead stories, close single quote, I'm like, I don't know. I think that maybe somebody who's just pissed they're getting, I think that maybe, I'm sorry, I don't know. I think that maybe that, I think that maybe, that sounds better. There is a space. I think that may be somebody who's just pissed that they're getting squeezed out. Squeezed out. So keep that in mind. So I'm assuming he means the Vegas is dead stories are coming from business owners and not content creators, because content creators create content around that subject line, that title continuously. Like every day there are new videos about how Vegas is dead, it's over, etc. I already kind of mentioned that. So this is the divide. Oh, close excerpt quote. So this is the divide and why we're looking at this K-shape today, because getting squeezed out, as Derek Stevens says, by economy shifting decisions to almost literally drive away normal, loyal Vegas fans may actually be a little bit worse than simply not responding to new market decisions and directions and so on. So, so small businesses if they're getting squeezed out, it's not because of the economy, it's because of some decisions made on high. So put a pin in that for a moment. The lower half of the K is basically small businesses and any business that is just getting started. So startups or recently opened, recently launched small business efforts, etc. The restaurant mentioned in the article, Lucy Ethiopian, has been around for decades. And I was trying to remember if I've been there. I think I may have been there about 2 years ago. And there have been many stories published over the last year or maybe 2 years that sound familiar and similar. Similar to this situation and familiar because they're just becoming more and more common to hear with successful business operating for decades. I think it was OCHA had to close. They were around for over 20 years. This one is over 30, if I'm saying that. I think it's over 30. So yeah, Lucy Ethiopian, very popular, well-known. So decades of business throwing in the towel thanks to reduction in customer numbers. Lucy is not throwing in the towel, but there are similar stories about businesses throwing in the towel. And who knows, hopefully things will turn around for Lucy, but it sounds like, we'll read the excerpt and then you can comment to yourself and I will comment to you as well. Successful businesses operating for decades, sometimes throwing in the towel thanks to reduction in customer numbers, not to mention increases in costs. It's a perfect storm, perhaps. So from the owner of Lucy, an excerpt from the same New York Times article. I'm going to, if I don't pronounce this correctly, I apologize, of course. Excerpt quote, Waldo Archerimit, who runs Lucy Ethiopian Restaurant, and his name is in the article. I think it's a he. Yeah, he, according to the pronouns used in the excerpt. Who runs Lucy Ethiopian Restaurant, estimated that he had lost 70% of his income over the last year as tourists, especially those from other countries, pulled back. He said he had to lay off 4 longtime employees. At the same time, he said, everything has become more expensive. Rent, utilities, the food he buys at local markets. Waldo quotes, sometimes we can't even cover our expenses. Mr. Archerimit said, we'll have to close the business if it keeps going like that. So is there going to be a turnaround thanks to February being up by 2.1% or 2+%? Well, the LVCVA top numbers, the summary numbers, they're not the top numbers. The summary numbers don't really delve into demographics. I think they do report other demographic information if they have it. So the question is whether more people who will tend to patronize local businesses are visiting, or if it's more people who stick to their casino and then go back to the airport and jump in their private jet and fly home or wherever else. Clark County recently christened its first official cultural district. And I talked about this and the difference between this and the so-called Chinatown, which was already here in Vegas, but is not a cultural district. So talked about that already, which happens to be an Ethiopian cultural district. So Chinatown is not the same as a cultural district. So you You can Google around for that, and I did talk about it previously. Maybe this will help to keep this particular business afloat through the tough times, because it is part of this. You don't want to see your brand new cultural district collapse. And I think that was just over a year ago, may have been about a year ago, that the announcements were made and so on. But again, every month there are closures of restaurants that have been around for more than 10 years, sometimes 30 or more years, in addition to newer spots that they maybe suffer the classic startup business stats, and restaurants and other startups, something like 20% succeed after the first year, and up to 5 years. So if you make it past 1 year, it's looking better. But 5 years is kind of a magic number, right? So not everybody makes it through the first 5 years. Some don't make it much past that 1 year mark as well. Restaurants are not the story, but an indicator. By the way, my family owned a restaurant. I've certainly worked in restaurants. I am in no way, and even though I'm more of a food truck fan, and restaurants tend to hate food trucks, I'm still not a fan of small business owners, and of any type, in any industry or vertical or field, or however you want to view it. Not a fan of them being, how can we refer us, being squeezed out of just trying to do their business. So, yeah, interesting time ahead. And that's the ripple and squeeze. That I should do something with that. I think that sounds kind of interesting. Ripple and squeeze. So there's a ripple effect that I'm guessing is not explained so much. I don't really read too much about this impact unless you dive into actual economic impact of certain things, quarter by quarter, etc. Even this article barely touches on the issues locals face. The shift towards high value visitors or clients, or however they label them, it's high value something, customers, gamblers, gamers, not only means fewer people hanging out off the strip. Normal people may not appreciate the strip pricing, so they will visit, let's go check out that Ethiopian restaurant. I hope they're still open. Visiting those locally owned restaurants, but so that's what the normal people tend to do a little bit more. But the ripple effect might be worse. If there was a real investigation and reporting, we might have a better idea. And so I haven't seen any of this stuff lately, but it is something to take a look at. During the pandemic, this was more of a topic of coverage, because it was pretty much universal. I'm not sure about current times, but it's definitely something to look at in more detail. But we can surmise. Pardon me, summarize. What do I did type surmise in my notes here, so it is the correct term. Fewer booked rooms at resorts means fewer hospitality staff needed. That's simple math, right? So we can read about layoffs, or more often reduction in hours. Either way, the fun economy workforce is taking home less money. They're either no longer employed, they're employed less. There are fewer customers, fewer visitors to the hotel, maybe fewer people. YouTubers are fond of capturing video of empty casinos, despite what Derek Stevens says about his casinos. So this makes the news to varying degrees. That doesn't drill down into the impact on the employees that are laid off, or can only work 30 or 20 hours instead of a 40-hour work week. Interesting. But the ripple effect comes from small businesses like restaurants, as an example indicator, also seeing those lower customer and revenue numbers, which means reduction in hours, reduction in staff, and possibly outright shutdown. This chips away slowly at locals with enough money to get by, much less spend on local business. So you have hospitality, food services, things like this, fewer hours, possibly losing their jobs to layoffs, spending less money. They have less money to get by, much less spend on local businesses. So even if it's not tourists, even if it's not visitors to Vegas, however much, high value, normal value, whatever, the people who live here, the locals in the Vegas area, also may not be spending as much on local businesses. Just generally speaking, because it is a slower, 2025 was considered a summer slowdown, but it lasted all year. So because in Vegas it gets very hot in the summer, so it's like, we may not see, whatever. People are not spending as much money here because it's become very expensive and is trying to appeal to the high value customer. With recent inflation and even more recent increases in gasoline prices, I'm seeing at the gas station I walk by. I don't own a car, luckily. Thank you. Got out of that habit about 7 years ago, I think. The gasoline that I walk by has gone up I think it crossed over $1 since the beginning of March. So about 1 month, $1 increase. That is unlikely to go down. And diesel fuel also has gone up. So if you don't have a diesel vehicle, I used to have one, a diesel Jetta 90 horsepower version. That was my favorite car in the world. But diesel fuel has gone up, which will be a factor. Recent inflation, increase in gasoline prices, not to mention that we will likely get more increases in prices for anything that is trucked in, thanks to those diesel fuel prices increasing. Maybe seeing ripples spreading across Las Vegas and bouncing back to crisscross our locality. So those ripples are going to hit the sides of the region and reflect, and then they'll cross over each other, and who knows what's going to happen. But the serious point is that there is a cascading effect where fewer normal tourists, and right now it's they're appealing to people with money, but the total annual reduction or diminishment of tourism was only something like 7%. Now, I'm not trying to minimize that number, but I am saying it's nowhere near the pandemic decline. So what exactly happens because of that I'll put the air quotes around smaller reduction, could have been much worse. But does it continue to get worse? Everybody looks at a run rate based on 1 month. Oh, we had one good month. We're all set. We're back to normal. Everything's fine. But that's what maybe what Derek Stevens says. But what about what the owner of Lucy, I'm not even going to try to screw up his name again. Is he going to be saying, oh, good, we got an extra 2% for February, so we're back to normal. We're good. Hey, 4 people I had to lay off. Come on back. We're all set. So that's not really happening. And then we're going to see how these more recent economic developments, job growth numbers being generally not amazing, inflation, I was going to say influence, whatever. Inflation, I think I saw that it might be as high as 4%, 4.1%, something like this. So what does that actually mean? And we'll see a continued pullback on domestic tourism. International tourism is already not good. Greater Vegas has among the highest unemployment rates in the United States. So the state of Nevada right now, from what I looked up before I started recording the show, is similar to Vegas, but Vegas generally has the number that is compared in the city by city rundown, or a comparison list, ranking list, etc. So Greater Vegas has among the highest unemployment rates in the United States, presently estimated at 5.2% for, I don't know if that would be April or March. It might be April. I don't know. Well, it's about 5.2. It was as high as 5.9 recently, but we're at 5.2. The state of Nevada is also somewhere around 5.2, 5.3, so about the same. But we're often in the top 3 or so of the cities in the United States with the highest unemployment rates. So I just looked it up, and I don't know if this is current as of today, but I know it was either Fresno. So Fresno was in the list I looked at. It was either Fresno or somewhere else in the northern part of California that was number 1 in unemployment. So Fresno is number 1. A city in California has been number 1 for some time now. And then Las Vegas has been right at number 2. I don't know if they ever went to number 3. I don't know that we've been number 1 recently. I just don't watch this number frequently enough. But the fact is, Las Vegas and unemployment are 2 great tastes that seem to be sticking together. And these can change month to month, so it's hard to make dramatic predictions. But the fact is, unemployment is a problem here. Nevada, as a state, also ranks in the high end, which is not a great thing. I think California still is number 1, and the list I saw for current, so it was either March or April, did not have Nevada on the list, even though the corresponding unemployment rate was on the list for some other state. So the take home, though, we have unemployment. We're doing really good at that. So if our tourism numbers don't improve, so if they slip and we move tourism to if the visitors and the businesses that come together are on that upper half of the K, then your small restaurants, your small businesses that depend on tourism, or employees people who directly engage in the fun economy workforce, if they are taking home less money, then they can also engage less with our local businesses. So you can't patronize your favorite restaurants so much, can't eat out so much. And oh, guess what? Groceries may be going up because of diesel fuel and shipping and transportation costs in general. Can't drive your car around as much. So there's a whole bunch of factors that are driving that bottom half of the K in an undesirable direction. So the squeeze, remember ripple and squeeze, the squeeze that Derek Stevens refers to is one where conditions have been altered across the board. So it's not collusion though, no way. To encourage big spenders or whales to visit Vegas and drop money on the tables in their casinos, but not to venture out into Vegas so much to participate in the larger economy as normal people might. And again, when you visit Vegas, it's nice to wander around the Bellagio or the Wynn or wherever. And they have very nice restaurants, but you can go to Chinatown. You can go to Ethiopia, the Ethiopian Cultural District. You can go to the Arts District. You can go to any number of places where there are small, independently owned businesses, restaurants, coffee shops, certainly bars and what do you call it? Like sports bars, video game bars. There's all kinds of Vegas cultural innovation happening beyond the Strip and even beyond Fremont. And it's worth checking out. And people who want to get a little bit more value might find that interesting. But the question is, do people who have tons of money falling out of their pockets worry about such things? Are they interested in going and playing video games at, I can't remember if it's Player One or whatever they call it, but let's go to the Pinball Museum. No, I'm too rich for that. So yeah, I don't know exactly what the breakdown is on the tourism number increase for February and if people are revisiting places, and we'll get better news for March and April as far as small businesses benefiting. But the squeeze starts with, hey, let's encourage people who will not patronize small businesses. And then we'll just say, oh, they're just upset because they're getting squeezed out because they don't have the power to control pricing and thus steer tourism. Whatever. Also, by the way, the LVCVA could do, I'm just going to complain, this is my opinion, they could do a better job at encouraging visitors for conventions to get off the Strip, to go and explore Vegas a little bit more. And I'm not saying they don't do that, because they do a little bit, but I think they could probably do it a little bit more. And this happens. You'll get the local economic driving entity, the Chamber of Commerce or the tourism offices, or here it's the LVCVA, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority. They want to drive people to whatever they rank as the most possible benefit and so on. So the Strip is very visible. It's what people know about Vegas, but they could, I think, be a little bit more proactive. So when I lived in Sunnyvale, for example, there was a downtown that was not doing well because of some construction that was driving the usual foot traffic and whatnot away, because it was, there were times you couldn't walk there because roads were torn up. The downtown Sunnyvale is about the size of a football field at the time. It has grown since. I think it's kind of recovered. But when the city had an opportunity to make use of a digital billboard on the 101 freeway, they chose to advertise Target instead of focusing on Murphy Avenue downtown and so on. And I asked somebody with the city, I said, how come they went with Target, which is a national brand, instead of promoting downtown Las Vegas and some of the small businesses, or just, hey, come on down, we're still open, or anything like that? They said, well, Target is a better recognized brand, so more people would know, oh, there's a Target in Sunnyvale, etc. And it's walking distance from downtown, but the problem is people that are looking for Target are not looking for, the small bars and restaurants and coffee shops and other businesses that were on Murphy. So you're only drawing people to the Target, not to downtown. That was my contention. So I'm going to say something similar, that the LVCVA, or just in general, our local media, the local influencers and so on, the influencers do actually point to local restaurants and other businesses. I'm just saying could be more, could be a little bit more cohesive, an effort in that direction. We should also point out again that properties owned by Derek Stevens are participating in the Canadians at Par experiment, which takes Canadian dollars from visitors from Canada I don't know. I think you actually have to be visiting from Canada. I don't think Canadians can send money to their friends and family in the U.S. Uh, I haven't been able to check that out myself because I'm not from Canada. But they take Canadian dollars as a one-to-one exchange for U.S. dollars. So $1 Canadian is $1 U.S. for the purposes of checking in and taking advantage of some of the property amenities and whatnot. So it's a benefit for visitors from Canada to those properties. This is a promotion for the Circa Resort and Casino, the D Las Vegas, and California Hotel and Casino. Those are the three properties that Derek Stevens owns downtown. So it's a loss leader of sorts, which helps to promote these properties. Obviously, they get mentioned in various news coverage and so on. But it is not a fundamental change in policy to return to broad appeal and to normal customers that are not overflowing with spare money. And the promotion is only on those properties. So there's no direct benefit to nearby businesses other than being proximal. So if you take advantage of this at par deal, that only gets you so far, because now when you go to Lucy, Ethiopian, you're spending Canadian dollars. So it's going to appear to be a little bit more expensive, perhaps, depending on where you go. So you may stick on Fremont. You still are spending Canadian dollars outside of the three properties and so on. So, and I've talked about this, whether these promotions are going to be effective over the long term. I personally think not so much. So we'll end, this is the final section, on the ecosystem. In our recent episode, Community versus Ecosystem, I touched on how a locality basically has a single ecosystem. Though if we really want to get into the biological equivalence, ecosystems can vary within, if I can correct my little typo here, can vary within larger ecosystems. For example, a pond in a forest or a human-adapted section of a desert, not unlike Vegas, where people live within Vegas, where the coyotes, snakes, and scorpions and rabbits live. So to say that there's only one ecosystem is not accurate. I think I may have suggested that, but it was really a question of can resorts and hotels and the fun economy businesses exist within the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem? So are they coincident in some way, overlapping? Are they one ecosystem? They could be, but as we think about it, and this one article basically summarizes the fact that not really. So there's a larger ecosystem that enables an entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. The question is whether they have to be contiguous, and that's not the case, right? That's where they diverge from biological ecosystem. So you have city versus county and whatnot, but generally speaking, they kind of overlay. So the larger ecosystem of Vegas is still what it is. The entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem is possibly valuable to the biome of startups and small businesses, if we're keeping that equivalence in terminology in place. But just like the and the rabbits, just like the larger ecosystems having interdependence between its components, which we talked about in that other episode about communities, and also with the biome residing within it. So the businesses and other entities in an economic ecosystem are interdependent with the ecosystem elements itself. So the things that I've pointed out as in my list, the talent pool, the access to capital, the legislation and regulation, and the culture of innovation, the startup culture, the whatever you want to say, and the culture is different from the people participating, because the culture may be pervasive into the general population that is curious but not directly involved. So having that energy or that general familiarity and maybe even some excitement or et cetera, because those people could be investors or future entrepreneurs themselves. So it's kind of an indication of fertility, I suppose. So the inner ecosystems exist in the same way, and the inner ecosystems are interdependent with the outer ecosystem. So depending on, this is probably worth more of an in-depth discussion. On the one hand, you could say it's just one big giant ecosystem, but if you really maintain the biological equivalence and you take a hard look at how there's actually some competition for resources, but the squeeze, right? That's basically what that is. Hey, we're still benefiting the casinos and resorts and that part of the economy, because they're able to charge more money and draw higher value customers, but they're also driving away potential customers of other smaller businesses. And some of those might be startups or small businesses that would be considered a part of the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem. And so there's a competition for resources. There is an opportunity cost to making some of these decisions, and those ripple effects are what they are. So this is worthy of a genius roundtable conversation, to be sure. We speak often of the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem of Greater Vegas on this audio program and how it is a part of the larger ecosystem, arguably similar, but the K-shaped chart illustrates where they differ. And by the way, this is a chart for illustration. It's not actual data. That's also something that the Genius Roundtable could dive deeper into, is what the actual breakdown is and where benefit is flowing and where detriment is also flowing in another direction. So as do statements that, as we have referred to here, about how a casino participates versus how a smaller business and employees participate, and then the second order effects and so on. I would like to think the larger ecosystem, especially if there is an effective transition to a more diverse economy eventually, can support both parts of the K, and that maybe the lower part will tip up eventually and head in a positive direction. That would be nice, wouldn't it? But it really appears that the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem is going to have to work out its somewhat competitive existence within the ecosystem that enables the extraction economy, as we've also talked about. And the extraction economy has been around as long as Nevada has. So it can be tricky to say, but wait, we want to cultivate an educated talent pool and make it possible to start businesses here. And that's the right to start and the America the Entrepreneurial. So those are worth a future episode as I learn more about them, because I just started looking into them 2 or 3 weeks ago. So more to look at. The take-home final point: while people creating YouTube and TikTok videos are focused on Vegas being dead from a crowd size perspective, they wander around and through visual inspection, they draw that conclusion. Or the opposite, they find a crowded space and they show, look, there's tons of people here. The real question is whether the fun economy will continue to dominate and drive the way pursuits outside of the fun economy are enabled or even allowed to survive, where the key industries, we've talked about those as well, that might be a part of the diversified economy will be larger, more established entities, perhaps with a presence already established somewhere else in a different state, established, and with a talent pool to import from other locations. And again, we've seen this with, hey, bring your workforce. Hey, bring your employees, bring your current staff. Housing is cheap in Vegas, etc. Cheaper than Silicon Valley, certainly. And so on and so on. So this is where the Genius Roundtable cohort would be profoundly valuable to examine and understand these near-term issues, as they will impact the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem and the people trying to succeed within it, which we don't always get a clear story of, and certainly not quite as nicely represented when the bourgeoisie is driving and discussing things. And so what these will mean, and also what these various things these various factors and changes and so on, will mean to small businesses and startups aspiring for big things on a hill that may be too steep. And if it isn't right now, it might become too steep. So yeah, that's my take so far. I flipped through the article is not very long, so the excerpts are I'm not going to say they're half the article, but there's not a ton more to it. There's a quote. Let me pull this quote from that, also from the same New York Times article. For Americans carefully considering how they spend their money, some, such as Joe Granucci, a 51-year-old information technology worker from Oregon, feel Vegas just isn't worth it anymore. Quote from Mr. Granucci: Vegas used to be a place I'd go and find a great experience. He visited the Strip with friends recently, but now it's let's go to Vegas and find the place that will screw me the least. So that's nice. It's something to contend with, because access to capital can figure in here, confidence in the economy and whether it will support a startup infrastructure, whether it's a really good place for a sustainable business, or will funding sources that are outside of Nevada do what they do best, which is, here's some funding with some strings attached, and we're going to pull on those strings to make you move to Silicon Valley or to Austin or wherever. So all of these things kind of intermingle and coagulate into some sort of a state of affairs. And it will continue to be interesting to see what the terrain is like here. If you find yourself on the bottom part of that K-shaped economy as it exists today, do you want to stay there? Do you want to maybe try to get the jumping on that top part of the K is a little bit more expensive, most likely, but at least make the general small business and startup economy here a little bit more positive, so that you can be in a direction that's at least parallel to the top part of the K. In other words, who is looking out for the smaller players, and what are these decisions about? And are they in your interest at all? Not even your best interest, but in your interest at all? Or is there still hey, my business is fine. I got plenty. I don't know what you're worried about. Maybe you're getting squeezed out. That's all I'm going to say for today. So thank you for listening, as always, on this Friday, April 3rd. And good luck out there. Bye-bye.